The catchily named Oris Diver's 65 12-hour Calibre 400 is one of my most exciting watch purchases ever. It's been interesting to behold how this watch release was received in the press. And when I say press, I of course do not mean the BBC, but rather the niche publications that us watch fans follow. It seems to be a combination of, wow, look at this thing, it's absolutely stunning, and this is confusing me. Is it a dive watch, GMT, or tool watch? What seems to happen immediately is that any new watch releases has to be categorized, and if a release dares to mix up the features of either categories, say a bidirectional bezel on a diver, then we'll use that as a reason to dismiss the release and argue about it online. So let me state early on why exactly I bought this watch, and if you can identify with my reasons, then I invite you to watch this review to the end. I've always loved the aesthetics of the 65, but I've never owned one. I often go diving on my holidays, and I will of course wear a watch when I do, but a dive computer is a must. I also travel quite a bit for work and holidays, and an easy way to keep track of time zones is more useful to me than a unidirectional timer. Finally, and this is a big one, I'm starting to have concerns about servicing some of my pieces and what that is going to cost me. The in-house movement that Oris has created comes with a 10-year warranty, 10-year service intervals, a 5-day power reserve, and an accuracy that is consistently within -3 to +3 seconds a day. The Calibre 400 is quite astonishing, and is now mounted in their most beautiful watch design, to my eyes at least. So as the meme says, shut up and take my money. Let's dive in, shall we? If you enjoy my videos, please consider a like and subscribe, and if you've already done so, thank you so much for your support. My first impression of the Diver 65 is, wow, this feels like a very delicate watch. It definitely has an effortless vintage vibe without trying too hard, and the dimensions are particularly impressive when considering the reasonable water resistance of 10 ATM or 100 meters, and again, a spec monster of a movement. Including the double-domed crystal, it's a rather svelte 12.8mm thick. The lug width is 20mm, and the case itself is actually only 39mm diameter, but with a slight overhang of the bezel, it measures up to exactly 40mm diameter. I don't normally start with the bracelet, but I will today since it's really rather unique. The tapering down all the way to 14mm from 20mm is dramatic and adds again to the vintage vibe. It is also quite comfortable to wear due to this, and whilst I'm not a bracelet person and will likely put this on leather eventually, or an Erica strap, which seems inevitable with me, I find it comfortable and attractive. The buckle and clasp is so small that it almost feels like a child's watch, and all of the links are, for lack of a better word, skinny. It's not like it would break or anything, and it's not tinny as such, just very dainty. There are some faux rivets on most of the links, which I'm not a huge fan of to be honest, but it does go with the vintage vibe, so that ultimately is up to you what you think about it. Also, the pin and collar system to remove links is annoying to use, but on the other hand, in such a slim bracelet, screws would likely not have been the best option, so I think it's fine, particularly since you'd likely only adjust the bracelet once in your ownership. A combination of half links and 5 micro adjust positions ensures that if you love the bracelet, you'll get a good fit. Of note is the fact that there's no diver's extension or quick adjustments. Now let's address the moneymaker here, this beautiful face. I'm definitely still in the honeymoon phase since I'm passionately in love with it. There were a lot of renders online and not so many photos, and what you can clearly see here is a glossy black bezel and a matte black or rather dark grey dial, something that wasn't always clear in photos. On the dial we'll find a reasonably sized printed logo and simply 10 bar/100 meters and 5 days to indicate the power reserve. We have a color matched date window at the 6th position with the obligatory Swiss-made text surrounding it. The indices are all applied, loomed, which I'll come back to, and are all round except the Oris shield logo at 12. The fence post hour and minute hands and the lollipop seconds hand are extremely legible against this strictly monochrome affair. Overall, if you're into clean, functional designs, this is one of the hottest watch releases of 2022, in my opinion. I will also give a quick shout out to Vincent and Wamada Watches for sourcing one quickly for me and offering his usual unrivaled customer service. I'll link his shop up in the description. The aluminium bezel is, as I mentioned, not strictly a diver's bezel, since it's marked with 12 hours and is also bidirectional. But I will note that the earliest dive watches had bidirectional bezels, and so does all of the internal dive bezels of both old and new. It feels extremely precise and oozes quality to me, and this is probably the easiest way to measure another time zone. If it's 10 o'clock in your home time zone, but it's 2 o'clock in your current time zone, simply position the bezel with 10 at 2, and you know at all times what the time is at home. A true GMT hand would also tell you if it's day or night at home, and it's probably the best complication from that point of view, but this is fine also. I do dive a bit as mentioned, and I would have no problem with measuring my dive time here too, since the bezel is so solid that it's unlikely to be knocked out of position. But if it did, I'm not going in the water without a dive computer. And if anything, my pressure gauge that tells me how much air I've got left is more important than anything when you're 20 meters deep. Trust me. The sapphire glass covering the dial is particularly beautiful, with its dramatic curve and distortions, and it has enough AR coding to not hinder legibility. I love the look of it, and actually that side-on glance at the watch where the indices reflect the light and the slight distortion of the whole arrangement makes me smile every time. The unguarded and signed crown is easy to grip at 6.8mm, and winding this movement is buttery smooth. This is also where we'll find some polished surfaces, which will scratch of course. The side of the case is polished from lug to lug, and being so slim, it'll hopefully not get too scratched up over time, but if it does, no big deal to me anyway. I buy my watches to wear them, not to stick in a safe. This is the first watch I've received with its own brochure on the movement. And again, this is an independent Swiss watch company, not owned by the Swatch Group or the Rolex Group, that's developed an incredible movement. You get a full view of it through the sapphire glass on the back, and the large rotor with the Oris shield in combination with the full axis is to me beautiful, despite none of the usual decorations that we'd see from other brands. It matches Rolex 10-year service intervals, it has COSC equivalent accuracy, and it's got 5 days power reserve. You can actually just make out the 2 barrels that the rotor charges, and each of them stores 60 hours of energy. Regarding its resistance to magnetic fields, it's been stress tested to 2250 Gauss, where it deviated less than 10 seconds per day. And when you consider that the latest ISO 764 anti-magnetic standard requires a watch to be accurate to within 30 seconds a day after exposure to 200 Gauss, it is rather impressive indeed. I simply think that Oris have not received enough praise for this movement. And whilst I know that early versions had some small issues, they're all fixed now, and I'm very proud to own a watch with a Calibre 400 engine within. The lume is adequate, not amazing, but at least it's far stronger on the hands than the indices, as would make sense. I'd love a little more overall, but it is good enough for me. So if it's not obvious, I'm quite smitten by my purchase. I love the look of it, it wears well, I think it's classic enough to last for a long time in the visual department, and the enormous chocolate-covered delicious icing on the cake is that fantastic movement. A 10-year warranty and service intervals is something I'd only expect for watches costing 4 times the price, and even then, I would not get similar features. If you're in the "it's too expensive for an Oris" corner, then I urge you to reconsider. This is a brand that's the Swiss underdog with specs that matches most other things out of Switzerland, and if we cross the border to Germany, similarly priced watches with various features to extend the life of the movement sport Sellita or Eta movements, or clones thereof. This really is an unrivaled investment in both your collection and in the company itself that deserves your money. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.